Life is a special operation. America, a grand experiment. Now gone awry. American reservations return as FEMA camps. Slavery sins as big pharma chains. Tobacco, wine, and manna were creator medicines, gifted to connect us. Now they corrupt us. Ukraine is America's biolab. America is the global cabals. Zelensky played a president on TV, ran a virtual campaign, had 30% support, won in a surprise landslide. Sound familiar? Ukraine was overtly invaded by Russia. America covertly by everyone. But slavery is a choice. Fear is a reaction. Courage, a decision. And contagious. And death, well, just ask Jesus. Retired soldier, special agent and spy turned whistleblower warrior. Served in sabotage, rejected and redeemed, failed and forgiven. Betrayed and saved, rejecting revenge. Humbled and blessed, repurposed in redemption as chaplain, leader, teacher, and truth teller. Now America's intelligence officer, following God, leading my family, and any that choose to join on our long walk to faith and freedom. Welcome. I'm Jeff Prather, and this is the Prather Point. Hey, welcome everybody. Very exciting show today. Got a old friend and a legend in the special operations community as my special guest. But before we get there, a couple news highlights. There's more fake news about fake Trump reforms out there. And, you know, I just said this on my Patreon. And again, please go to beready123.com, beready123.com. And you can get a Iridium 9555 sat phone there free for 24 months at $95.55 a month. Or you can get in Marsac at $89.95 a month as well for the coming crisis and that. But there's lots of other great things there. There's this knapsack, which is really great. It's got all kinds of great features in it where it's got, and I'm using this stuff all the time as I'm moving. It's got a bulletproof level 2 container in there. Of course, EMF pouches as well, really handy. And as I'm moving back into the new house, the build after the fire, I'm using all that stuff from beready123.com. So please support them. They're great supporters of the show, the sat phone store. But as I said on my Patreon today, and that's patreon.com/Jeffrey Prather at the $5, $15, or $25 level. $15 special resources. Posted several special resources today. $25 a month is daily training videos. $5 just curated news. But I was talking about how some days I don't report a lot, publish a lot, and some days I just inundate you with stuff. And that's because I don't want to inundate you with fake news. But here's an example of more fake news about fake Trump reforms. And the big story was judge declines to block Trump's order on mail-in voting. And this is from the Epoch Times. I was at an event speaking. Epoch Times was right there. Didn't interview me at all. Federal judge on May 28th allowed President Trump's administration to implement an executive order imposing restrictions on mail-in voting. Sounds so good so far until you get down to the point where the reason why the Democrats, of course, went against this, and we definitely need voting reform. The voting machines are corrupted. The mail-in votes are corrupted. We know that Pedo Joe stole the election from Trump, 81 million, and you can't get anybody to turn up. It's very clear. It's very obvious. So we need election reform. Have we had election reform? No. Little bits and pieces in places. But this story is a fake news story and Trump is trying to look like he's doing something with an executive order. And of course, issuing this executive order, the Democrats immediately protested. The judge disagreed with the Democrats. And here's why the judge disagreed with Trump's mail-in order. And the order, the executive order is, absent an injunction, the federal government would compile a list of U.S. citizens and would coerce states into only allowing people on the list to register to vote and vote in elections, even though the sources of the list are deficient. That's what the Democrats are arguing. That is, the federal government is going to compile lists, send them to the states about that. But here's why the judge allowed the order to stand. Judge Nichols disagreed, writing in a 26-page decision that while the order directed federal officials to compile the lists, it does not mandate any action by a state once a list has been transmitted to it, and an event, no infrastructure for compilation or transmission of the list has been established. What's that mean? That means that when the states get the list, they crumple it up and throw it away. And so this is more fake news, and this is more fake reform from Trump. We have no election reform. And what this really means is it wasn't too big to rig. It was, let's make a deal. And that's why we see Trump no longer supporting his Make America Great agenda, and actually outing people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massey, who are more MAGA and America First than he is, while he is now unfortunately sold out to Israel, being directed constantly by Israel and by Big Pharma and everybody else. Also, the truce and peace treaty with Iran is false as well. The U.S. has carried out new airstrikes in southern Iran, targeted a military site that was believed to pose a threat to U.S. forces and commercial maritime traffic. And this was as of yesterday. So there is no real truce happening. And of course, Kushner's not going to let that happen, or Witkoff's not going to let that happen because they want the real estate. We've talked about that a great deal. But even in more depth there is a secret plan by the U.S. and Israel to seize the Al-Aqsa custodianship of the site. This is where Moses got the Ten Commandments. This is also supposedly, according to the Muslims, where Muhammad was taken to heaven. And that's where the Golden Dome is. The Israelis want that back because that's where the temple, the third temple, needs to be rebuilt. And the United States and Israel are actively working to end Jordan's historic custodianship of Jerusalem's Al-Aqsa Mosque complex, according to multiple American, Jordanian, and Palestinian, as well as Western and Gulf Arab sources. So there's a lot of sources for this. The plan is championed by Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner. Of course, he is a Zionist. He's Jewish and a Zionist. His wife just converted to Judaism as well. And of course, Mike Huckabee, who is a Christian Zionist, and was saying, hey, Greater Israel, fine. Of course, I've debunked that in detail, showing how in the Old Testament, Joshua 45, everything was fulfilled. God gave Israel, the Greater Israel, everything that was promised in the Old Testament. So, and then they lost it again because they were corrupted. So plus, Huckabee is misquoting scripture where he says, those who bless Israel will be blessed. That's Schofield Bible changing the words of the Old Testament. It's God who blesses you, God talking to Abraham, you, not Israel. And I've shown how 30 different Bible translations all say you, not Israel. Schofield Bible corruption is the only one that does that. But this new deal would say Israel has a major say in the appointment of imams, preachers, and senior mosque officials, and would sign off on the content. And the authority would rotate between Islamic nations and Israel as well. And so that's what is being proposed and being worked, as opposed to them simply blowing it up. There's a lot of rumors of tunnels going underneath there. But this is much more likely the way for this to happen. But regional powers have voiced opposition to Israeli encroachments on Al-Aqsa. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has called for the Muslim world to unite against Israel, and in 8 Muslim majority countries condemned Israel's closure of the mosque during Ramadan. They also tried to close it during Easter, by the way, and then were for the first time ever. So basically what they're doing, they're closing down against Christianity, they're closing down against Islam because they want Judaism, not really Judaism, Zionism, because there's plenty of Israelis who are against the Zionist state of Israel. But the status quo of Al-Aqsa Mosque has been in place since the 1967 war, and to change this will likely ignite the Middle East against Israel. That will fulfill scripture, and I think they want that to happen. But if implemented, this could inflame the entire region, according to Gulf Arab sources. I certainly agree with that. And what I say will happen is, if this deal comes through, is what we've always seen is Mossad breaking truces and assassinating. But in this case, once joint control is achieved, Duvedan is an elite special forces unit within the Israeli self-defense forces that specializes in undercover urban operations and direct action, often using Arab civilian disguising as trained in counter surveillance and high-risk tactical missions and direct action. And they'll blow the mosque, making room for the Third Temple, and an all-out war of Muslim nations against Israel would happen. So that's my assessment of what would happen if this joint control happens. And this is clearly that's why Trump has had in Mar-a-Lago a gold replica of the Ark, and all the parts are ready for this. And of course, a lot of American Christian Zionists want to build a third temple. So then there's the second coming of Yeshua. Of course, that's like helping nail the nails into Yeshua, whether it does not have to happen scripturally at all. The New Jerusalem, if you read scripture, Revelations, comes down from heaven. Why? Because the old Jerusalem is a smoking ruin. Why? Because of corruption. So again, I've talked about this a great deal in detail, but this is another way that they are going about this. Give me some of that. Says, I have no doubt that serious concerns about the security and ethics of our election process exist. Walker, my God, I used to like Mike Huckabee. What the hell happened to that guy? Huckabee is lost. Somebody else says, no, Huckabee, I talked about this extensively. He's a total American Christian Zionist. He was on with Tucker. He totally misquoted scripture, and Tucker did not catch him on this, even though he flew to Israel. It's not that hard to do. You do your homework. Of course, I do more homework than most. But again, it's Genesis 12:1 that everybody's referring to, is who blesses. The misquote is, who blesses Israel, I will bless. Who curses Israel, I will curse. It's not what the scripture says. That's only the Schofield Bible that is changing scripture, which is a sin, by the way. If you look at my post of Bible Hub, 30 different biblical translations all say, who blesses you, Abram, who became Abraham, I will bless. Who curses you, Abram, who became Abraham, I will bless. So they're not even following scripture. And then, of course, again, to show that the Zionist Judaism is false. If you read the end of Joshua, the last line says that all of the Lord's promises to Israel were fulfilled, that all the greater Israel that goes before that. And you can look at my Substack. I did a big Substack on this. I did a big sermon on this. So it was fulfilled. God gave them everything he promised. And then they lost it again because they started worshiping false idols. They were doing sexual practices to false gods. And then again, I did another Substack and sermon on even earlier how Yeshua himself says on the steps of the temple to the Pharisees that when you kill the son, you lose the vineyard. That is, the people of Israel were never the Israel of the Israel religion. Israel is a secular state. And when they killed the son of the vineyard owner, they would lose the vineyard. So that's very clear. But propaganda is out there. But anyway, and the reason that's important is because we have this Christian nationalism that is infecting our Pentagon. And of course, it was never about separation of church and state. It was about having a national religion the founders didn't want. Why? Because they left England because there was the Church of England there. But the first Bible was printed by Congress for use in public schools for morality and also for grammar and syntax, which hardly everybody's illiterate today anyway. But anyway, I want to move on and get to my guest because there's not that much happening. It's a slower day. And this is a real treat for me because this is an old friend and someone I highly respect and a legend in the special operations community, Command Master Sergeant Sanchez was born in Albuquerque, New Mexico in 1964. In 1983, he enlisted in the United States Air Force. While attending basic training, he participated in the pararescue specialty briefing, successfully passed both the qualification, flying examination, and the physical fitness test. He completed basic training at Lackland Air Force Base in 1984, which is funny because that's when I got commissioned at the same time. We're kind of peers, although he's done a lot more stuff than I have. Following graduation, he completed pararescue indoctrination training at Lackland Air Force Base in 1984, Special Forces Underwater Operations course in 1984. That's a tough course, very tough course, much more tough than the Navy, by the way. U.S. Army Airborne Training at Fort Benning, 84. I beat him on that one. I went in 82. Air Force Survival Training at Fairchild Air Force Base, Washington. Pararescue Recovery Specialist course at Kirkland in 85. In 85, Chief Sanchez received his first permanent duty assignment at the 41st Air Rescue and Recovery Squadron, McClellan Air Force Base, California. Throughout his pararescue career, he served in numerous operational roles, including team member, team lead instructor, flight examiner, director of training, and element leader. During his assignments, he was credited with saving 178 lives through the execution of numerous search and rescue missions. This guy's got the best stories of any Spec Ops guy I've ever talked to, and hopefully we'll get to some of those. We've known each other for over 25 years, I think. His assignments include the 41st Air Rescue and Recovery Squadron, McClellan, Air Rescue Squadron at Kadena Air Force Base. I used to fly through Kadena all the time. Tier 1 operator and team leader with the 2-4 Tactics Squadron at Fort Bragg. That's the AFSOC equivalent of Delta. And actually, there's even fewer of them, and they're always chopped to every mission as well. Air Force Pararescue School at Kirkland Air Force. He was at the schoolhouse as Director of Training and Chief Enlisted Manager for the 306 Rescue Squadron at Davis-Monthan. Of course, we knew each other there quite a bit. He's a senior aircrew member with more than 3,200 flying hours, master parachutist and tandem parachute with more than 3,800 jumps, way more than me. He is also a combat scuba diver, PADI dive master, Naval Special Warfare Special Operations technician, close quarter battle technician instructor. We taught that together. Off-road vehicle instructor, police officer, SWAT, EMT, master instructor, wilderness medical instructor, National Registered Emergency Medical Technician, paramedic. His military decorations include Meritorious Service Medal with 2 Oakley clusters, Air Medal, Joint Service Commendation Medal, 2 Oakley clusters, Air Force Commendation Medal, 2 Oakley clusters, Joint Service Achievement Medal with 1 Oakley cluster. I got one of those. Air Force Achievement Medal, Armed Forces Expeditionary Medal, Combat Readiness Medal, Air Force Good Conduct Medal, 5 Oakley clusters, National Defense Service Medal, Armed Forces Service Medal, and NATO Medal. He's a recipient of multiple distinguished honors, including Airman Quarter Awards, NCO Quarter of the and Year Awards, and the U.S. Air Force NCO Pararescueman of the Year Award. So he's a legend in the community, old friend of mine, and has graced Warrior School with his instructorship. Welcome back to the Prather Point, brother. How you doing?
Oh, good to see you. Thanks for having me.
Did I miss anything?
You read the long bio. No, yeah, you kind of cover. You read the long bio, but good to see you again, and happy to be on your show.
Yeah, it's great, and great to have you. The last time you were on with the Warrior School anniversary, and I think that's where we first ran into each other in like 2004 or something down at Camp Shelby when. And verify this, we were teaching 600 soldiers a day, my close quarter combative systems, and we destroyed 4 baseball fields. Remember that back in the day?
Yeah. But the first time I started working with you, Jeff, was I just left the pararescue school, and I got the assignment at the 305th before they activated the 306 Combat Rescue Squadron. We were under the pilots at the 305th, and that's actually who I deployed with the first time I deployed with the Air Force team, and that was in the spring of 2005. And our team supported the lone operator mission there. But shortly before that, you were running Warrior School, and I think we met at a range. And I wanted to get my guys spun up on flat range shooting, pistol, and being from a reserve squadron, want to get the guys ready for deployment. And I think that's the first class we took with Warrior School. Sent my guys over there for pre-deployment training. I think it was a 1 week
Yeah.
course with Warrior
Yeah.
School, and very good class. We integrated some medical training in there.
Yeah.
And I think that's the first time we met. And then later on, we started doing the combatants with the Army. I think we went to Fort Benning together. Was it in Georgia? Somewhere in Georgia. And it surprised me because I'm used to working with, 11, 12, 13 students. I show up there for class one day. I think we had over 100 students there.
We were doing it
So-
like 600 a day for like 2 weeks. But yeah, and also
Oh,
with
yeah.
the pre-deployment, we had helos come in, which was really cool, and
Yeah.
land in the final exercise. So those were
Yeah.
good days. Those were really, really good. Very cool. So, AFSOC is not very well known in the SOCOM community, and I think they get short shrift. I was privileged to train a lot of them and work with you. So give an overview of the AFSOC elements, the PJs, the CCTs, the JTACs. In fact, I don't know if you remember Diego, who was a facilitator at Warrior School, who ended up being a JTAC and has since been decorated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So go over, please, the AFSOC Spec Ops positions and ranks and ratings, all that.
Right. Well, when I came in and I joined the military in '83 and went through the pipeline in '84. I joined when I was 18 years old, and really didn't know too much about Spec Ops. Being a country boy and everything, and talking to some of my mentors, my stepdad, my dad. They were all Army. They convinced me that the Air Force, because initially I was going to do 4 years, save enough money for college, get my GI Bill, and go to school. But they convinced me that the Air Force was the best way to go. But the recruiter, when I went to see the recruiter, I asked him, "What do you have the closest thing to Green Berets?" Because that's the only special ops I knew. Rambo, First Blood just came out in the early '80s, and like most young kids, you want to be a badass. So I go see my recruiter, and they said, "Well, we got SPs. They wear berets, and they're kind of our elite force of the Air Force." And little did I know he was an SP, doing recruiter duty. So I came in to be a cop in the military. And while I was at basic training, I got the briefing on, it wasn't called special tactics then, it was CCT and pararescue.
Wow.
So, we see. Yeah. So they brought us to an auditorium. They said, anybody interested in doing special duty assignment in Air Force Special Operations, show up at this theater. It was a day that we were off, and believe it or not, Air Force gets days off in basic training, unlike Army. So we went down to a theater, and I got the pararescue brief, and they showed people jumping out of planes, and it wasn't that long after Vietnam. You remember, Vietnam had ended, in '74, so it wasn't that long. So they showed, people jumping out of airplanes, scuba diving, mountain climbing, and by chance of chance, I signed up for it and went through the selection process, and started that pipeline. So when I graduated in doc, we started with 122 people, and there was only 100 beds in this dormitory. So the first day they worked us until 22 people quit. And then, we got assigned our bunks and started. So we ended up graduating 9 people out of the class. And my first school after that indoc was Combat Diver School in the Army in Key West. And at the time, I didn't realize you had mentioned
That's
it's
a
one of the
top
hardest
school.
schools in the Army.
Yeah, sure is.
It certainly has in '84. It certainly had the highest washout rate of any school in the Army.
Yeah, when they're
And
doing
here I
crossovers,
am.
they all pass out, and they just grab them off the bottom and
Yeah.
revive them. And yeah,
And indoc, pararescue indoc at the time, um, I didn't know it, but it was a really rough school. And to make it through there, it really prepared you for that dive school, because we were lucky enough to get slots to that. And when I showed up there, I was a teenager. And everybody on the airplane, we showed up at Fort Bragg and they flew us down to Key West, Florida. Everybody on the airplane, except for me and like 4 other guys, because we had some Green Berets in my class that went to Indoc that had cross trained. There were staff NCO Green Berets with jump wings and seasoned guys, and that was my team leader at at scuba school, and he was with us, pararescue. So they jumped in, and all the Air Force guys that are young had to stay on the airplane. We landed. So looking to my right and my left, I was looking. One of my classmates was a Vietnam vet, a Green Beret Vietnam vet that had been waiting for this slot to go to scuba school for 10 years. So
wow.
we didn't get treated very well there. As you can imagine, a teenager, I didn't even have a stripe on my sleeve, bro. I was an E1, going through one of the most elite schools in the Army.
Well,
So
the SF from
when
Vietnam have a legendary reputation, but actually, so do PJs from Vietnam as well.
yeah, well, a lot of the people that were there, because the combat dive school, you have to be an operator to go there. I mean, you got to be a Green Beret or Ranger. They're not going to send a truck driver to,
No.
combat diver school. So these are the best of the best of the Army. And so I'm, more than humbled to be there. So I graduated. I was on the third, they rank your teams from 1 to, I think we had 20 dive teams, so 40 students. So I was on dive 3. I was a good swimmer, and my dive buddy was a ranger, and we graduated. Third dive team, graduated that school, and then I show up at jump school, Fort Benning, Georgia. Again, no stripes on my sleeve, a teenager with a combat diver bubble on my uniform. So, that went over like a fart in a spacesuit, So, we're getting smoked out there because we're all one striper teenagers with a combat diver bubble on. So we went to jump school, got our jump wings, and jump school, you've been there, a pretty easy school. And then it was off to survival school, which is the Air Force Air Crew Survival, that was mandatory for any kind of air crew member. You have to go to a survival school, and it was a fairly easy course, 3 or 4 weeks, and then after that you go to the Pararescue Academy. They call it Academy now, but that was the Superman school back then, and it was a much shorter version than when I took it over as director of training. The school consisted of, I believe it was 5 to 6 weeks of medical, which now it's 8 months medical. A lot of focus on trauma medicine, combat medicine. Of course, we weren't national registered EMT basics or anything. We just did the military Pararescue Medical School. We carried 12 drugs, trauma packs, and basically I was confident that I could stabilize a trauma patient. And that was, like I said, a 5-week course. Then we went into mountain and tactics, and we learned how to do ropes and rescue. Very good course. We had really good instructors. Small team tactics, working with NVGs, doing pilot link ups, learning how to authenticate our pickup, whether it's a pilot or an isolated troop, learning how to authenticate them, treat them, and then bring them to a safe area for extraction. And that lasted about 6 weeks. And then we went to airborne training. We went to airborne school and we knew how to jump out of a plane, but we learned how to jump out of a plane wearing pony scuba tanks at night in the ocean. So
you're talking about free fall school now, right?
no, this was after. So when I went through, Jeff, they didn't have free fall. Was a later on course after you re-enlisted that we would send people to free fall. Much like your teams in the special forces, everybody that was a Green Beret wasn't Halo. And back in the day, everybody that was a PJ wasn't Halo. You got that afterwards. So it was my pararescue.
I thought all PJs were Halo and scuba.
They are now. They changed that in 88. In 88, they changed it to where everybody went to the Army Halo school. Now we have our own Halo school. But so I graduated. I went to Air Ops, and they teach you how to jump in trees. So you have to know how to let yourself down out of trees. Hazardous terrain at night, so you get a few more jumps. But no Halo at the PJ school back in '84. So I got my first duty assignment at McClellan Air Force Base in California, and then we really didn't have a tier 1 entity for pararescue. So the special team back in my day was McClellan Air Force Base. They were like the tip of the spear, going out in the field, doing new tactics and procedures. So I graduated high enough in my class that I got to pick McClellan, and I went there with a couple other guys and started really honing my skills more in the tactical side, being out in the field. And that was the first time in '86 we did an exercise at Dugway Proving Grounds, which, for those of your audience that aren't familiar, that's where Area 51 is. And we did an exercise out there, and that's when I first met Tier 1 operators, and I worked with the CAG guys, which is Delta. And I was really impressed with those guys, and I got attached to them as a vanilla PJ, young guy. I think I was 22 years old at the time.
Wow.
21, 22. And I didn't know anything about tier 1 ops, so in '89, we got a briefing on JSOC. They were starting to have PJs. It wasn't called the 2-4, it was called NAVCOs. And the CCT were the first team to be attached to tier 1 entities. And that was shortly after the failed rescue attempt of our embassy in Iran. That mission went south. And so they realized the need for a specialized team for counterterrorism. And CCT started working with them, and then they realized the need for pararescue to come in, and really that kind of saved, at the time, our career field, because in the late 80s, they did a big drawdown of pararescue. A matter of fact, I was in danger of getting kicked out of the Air Force because um, what was called high year tenure, meaning if you didn't make staff sergeant before 10 years, you would be forced out of the military. And promotion in the Air Force was very difficult. The pararescuemen were manned against aircraft. So, for example, on we're still flying H3s and H-53s. H-53 earned 2.5 PJs. So when the Air Force started drawing down their air rescue aircraft, in turn, pararescue started drawing down the authorizations for their career field. So if it wasn't for AFSOC, Air Force Special Operations Command, and Combat Control bringing PJs into special tactics, we would have lost a lot more PJs. But this was all around 1989, 1980 when we made that transition. And so going back to McClellan, my first duty assignment, we had a brief from some AFSOC PJs, Tier 1 PJs. They came down. Now, these guys had long hair. They wore denim jeans and shirts, and they came in and briefed us about the Tier 1 team at JSOC. And
Let me stop you. So that's worth delineating is there are PJs that are assigned to the regular Air Force, and then there are special operations PJs, correct?
well, yeah, there's two types of PJs now, and there were going back to 1990 when we started assigning PJs to AFSOC, which is the Air Force Special Operations Command. Now, Combat Control had already been in AFSOC. So they started bringing PJs onto these CCT teams to support their mission, but bring an additional capability of combat search and rescue on the battlefield.
When I
Right.
with the Rangers in like 80 into the Las Vegas Stallion on the edge of Nicaragua with the Ranger, there must have been CCTs then that were attached because these guys were hard like Rangers as well. That would have been CCTs.
What year was that, Jeff?
Be 80.
What year was that?
87, 86,
Okay.
something like that.
So there were probably CCT guys, and
Yeah.
there might have had a couple of Tier 1 PJs assigned with them. But it wasn't until 89 that they really started getting a influx of pararescuemen on the AFSOC side. And that's when I got my brief to go. And I put in my package, but unfortunately, I didn't have the rank. I was an E4. As you know, Jeff, I'm dyslexic, and I had a hard time getting promoted for a long time, because when I joined the military, I had a 5th grade reading level. So, before I re-enlisted, I had to go back to high school. And here I am, combat diver, Halo badge on, and I'm going back to night school to learn how to read so I could re-enlist. Very humbling. But I made it through that. I re-enlisted and I got the JSOC brief. I put in my package, and I wasn't selected to go to selection. So I got an assignment to Okinawa, Japan in '89. And while I was there, I just started training. And you've been to Okinawa. The northern training area is probably one of the hardest places to learn how to navigate. Like any jungle environment, it's very difficult to navigate, but I committed myself to learn how to navigate because I found out a little bit about selection, and I knew about the long march, and I knew about, you're going to be out in the field for several days navigating. You don't know how far you're going to go. So I started training and reading up on small team tactics and really honed my medical skills in hopes to get another chance to try out for JSOC. So that chance came in '91. I put in my package again, and one of my friends had gone to selection. Uh, they had two selections back then. They had a spring and a fall. He went to the spring one. He came back. He didn't get selected, but he was able to tell me what to prepare for. And I went back the fall of '91, my first time selection, and by chance I was selected. I was the only PJ selected in that selection, and I started my JSOC career. I went back.
Whoops, we just lost you. Wonder if he had to go on his phone. I wonder if his phone died. Dang. Oh, well, I will continue on there without him. Hopefully we will get him back, because he goes on to work with SEAL Team 6 as well. And just a lot of operations. He does the Luttrell rescue. He knew John Chapman as well, and is very familiar with those stories as well. So I really wanted to talk about in detail about how Air Force Special Tactics is not very well known. They're not very well appreciated. But as you were seeing there, the pipeline for Air Force Special Operations is longer and more difficult than the Special Forces or SEAL pipeline, because still not all Special Forces are Halo or Scuba. There's a Scuba team, there's a Halo team, there's a Rucksack team, but all PJs are Halo and Scuba, and that's because they have to get to various missions. So they have to have all those skills. So it's a much longer pipeline. And then after all the physical stuff, they've got to do the EMT stuff, and that washes out a lot of people as well. So they're real impressive. They're in super shape, and they're real impressive. And one of the great things about Warrior School was we got to do a lot of Air Force training. Haven't seen him come back yet, but hopefully he'll be able to come back in more. In the Luttrell thing, the whole story of Luttrell admitted initially that he threw his weapon away, didn't fire his weapon. All his magazines were recovered. And the story that he made up was really more made up for him by first the SEAL community and then by Big Navy. And this has become pretty well known now. It was always known inside the community. The whole Lone Survivor book and movie was about a failure to plan. You can even see this in the movie where they're climbing a peak, and they get to a peak and they see that there's another peak, and they go false peak. Well, they should have done map reconnaissance. Everybody knows that. That's extremely basic. And also on the hillside where they're like, what do we do with prisoners? None of that is figured out on the hillside. All of that is figured out in advance in your planning. But they didn't do their planning. The reason that whole mission failed was because they failed to plan. And so that is, and this has come out on many podcasts now, Spec Ops podcast, is this is taught as a failure and how to avoid such things. As well, but in the general public, it still looked as this heroic thing. There also weren't hundreds of bad guys after them. It was a small number as well. And the simple fact is that all the SEALs think they are as good on the land as they are in the water, and they're fabulous in the water. It is simply not the case. They do not have the experience of rucksack marching, of land navigation. They've had a lot of problems with that for a long time. And which is okay. Everybody screws up. But what the SEAL community has done and Big Navy has done is turn abject failures into propaganda pieces. And, that's the real sin there and crime. And of course, the worst version of that is the stolen valor with Chapman. And again, I really wanted to talk to Sanchez about Chapman because he knew Chapman and worked with Chapman, and also wanted to point out about Cunningham, who was the other PJ who died while he was one of the first guys off the aircraft, the first CH-47 that goes down, and he died taking care of other SEALs, using and really living up to the motto of "so that others may live." That's the PJ motto in particular. So I really wanted to get Sanchez's view on all of that. This is highly experienced, and he's done a lot of courses with me, not just as an assistant instructor, but as lead instructor. We've done, like I was doing a 5-day pistol course down at Cape Canaveral for the Air Force EOD guys down there. Then he wanted me to have me back to do a 5-day medical course. And I don't have the background to do that. So I brought him in. It was really funny because my military medical abilities were way out of date. I was still doing ABCs. He's like, "We don't do ABCs anymore, Grandpa. It's March. It's massive hemorrhaging, airway, respiration, compression, and hypothermia." And he was showing how we ended up killing a lot of guys that we were actually trying to save. Like, for example, in my day, we all used to carry Ringer's IVs, and we all used to stick each other all the time. We practiced sticking each other all the time. And I remember there was a 7th Group guy who got stabbed in Honduras, and the Blackhawks couldn't fly in bad weather, although they're supposed to be able to fly in bad weather. And they couldn't get him to Gorgas, and he bled out because we ran out of Ringers. Well, what we came to find out was that Ringers was preventing clotting. And so now you see the powder, I can't think of the name of it now, but I've got it in my IFAKs and my individual first aid kits of the clotting powder that tends to burn to some degree. And so just a lot of lessons learned the hard way in blood and death. Another thing was hypothermia, because you're cutting the clothes off the guy to get to him, and you're moving around in the environment, but he's still. So that's another lesson that I remember learning from that course. But he's very, very expert in his area, and I wish we could get him back on. I'll take a look here for any questions and see if there are any, since it doesn't look like he's going to make it back on, and he hasn't done stuff like this in a long time. And that's why I try and get some of these more old timers come in, like me, have a difficult time. I remember Chad Ball once of ODA 525, the guy who wouldn't shoot the little kids and decided to fight it out. Haven't been able to have him back on because of issues like this as well. But, if you have any questions or comments there, post them, because I guess Sanchez is not going to be able to make it back on. But anyway, that's why I'm saying they're more elite than SEALs, their motto being "so that others may live." And the 2-4 is the elite unit of the PJs that goes on every mission. It's kind of like a medic. It's kind of like an 18 Delta medic that goes on every mission. because there has to be. Oh, there he is back. Okay, can you hear and see me? Your microphone's on. There
I
you go.
lost him.
There you go. Got me?
Go back in.
Yeah, I can hear you and see you.
Was he texting you to let you
Yeah,
know?
I can hear and see you.
I think I lost
Went
him.
back out. I hear you and see. I hear you. I'm just
Lost
trying to-
you.
No, I got you. I'm going to text him, see if he gets that or not. Yep, went back out. Anyway, so sorry about that. Just when you get quite interesting, good guest, sir. Yeah, I know. Sorry about that. We'll see if we can get him back here. There you are. Can you hear and see me?
I'm sorry, Jeff. I must have lost you. I was just babbling on.
That's okay. I babbled on about you, but you're
Okay.
back. So I was getting to where you were talking about the Latrell rescue mission. Let's pick up from there.
Okay. I don't know where I lost you, but I was deployed with the 306th Rescue Squadron out of Tucson. But before it was the 306th, it was called the 305th. And it was before we had a combat rescue officer as our commander. So as you know, Pararescue didn't receive officers until 2001. And it was the first class of officers went through right during 9/11. And before then, all our commanders were rescue pilots, unless we were with AFSOC, where we would have a combat controller as our commander because they had officers. So we were just starting to bring in officers. I deployed shortly after I got out of the Air Force and went into the reserves. Although being in the reserves, I was a full-time reservist, so I was considered active duty. So at the 306, we had 8 full-time guys, and then the rest of the guys were reservists. I don't know if you remember Josh Apple, but he was one of your students, and he was a medical doctor as an E7.
Wow.
So these are the type of guys we had on our team. They did not want to be commissioned because at the time there was no pararescue officers. But these guys, Josh Apple, despite being a medical doctor, wanted to be a pararescueman. He didn't want to be a flight surgeon. He didn't want to get a commission. He wanted to be a pararescueman and do that mission. Unfortunately, we didn't have officers at the time. So when I deployed in 2005 to Kandahar as a reserve PJ, active reserve PJ, we took a team of, I believe it was 11 PJs to Kandahar to support the 306 and their combat rescue mission. Operation Red Wing was a mission to, it was a Marine mission, as you, I don't know how much you know about the background of Red Wing, but initially the Marines had that. They had been operating in that area for some time. They had good command and control. They had good comms. They had their exit plans, their rally points all set up, and they had killed a lot of bad guys on that list. And one of the guys, Ahmad Shah, was the leader of that area. And it was estimated that he had anywhere from 15 to 20 guys under him. You know, he wasn't a high level commander, but you know, he had caused some trouble in that region. But second Battalion Marines were in there doing that mission for some time. And they had requested some rotary wing support. And the 160th is the premier Air Force that supports Tier 1 entity. You know, the 160th is the best pilots in the world. And they had requested support from the 160th. And basically the SEALs found out about it and wanted that mission. And there wasn't a big handoff. The Marines told them of some of the threats in the area. They told them
Well, I
that
think
they had limited.
more realistically is the SEALs didn't pay attention to the handoff. That
Yeah,
has happened repeatedly.
Yeah, and there's a lot of speculation, but basically lessons learned. We should have learned lessons from Roberts Ridge that never got written down, that didn't get implemented.
So
and then
go to that, so I can speak to that because I've had ODA 595 guys on the show multiple times, and nobody listened to their handoff either. Delta took over, and 6 came in, and that's the whole. The intelligence said, whatever you do, don't land on this peak, because 3 generations of guys have been on that peak, and they just ignored all of that. So I would assume that they ignored the handoff as well.
Yeah. And, that group of SEALs that went in, I think Marcus was the only one with trigger time. He was the only one with combat experience. And like any young guy, any operator, we all want to get in the fight. Any chance that I was given to do anything, I was the first one to raise my hand. And you want to be in a fight until you're in the fight,
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was recommended. It was recommended that they go in with a force of about 20. They went in with a much smaller force than that. They were told about the comms problems. They were carrying embitters, which for your audience that aren't familiar, an embitter is basically, it's a handheld radio that has limited power. It is SATCOM capable. But it's not something I would rely on if you had to get comms 100% of the time. I wouldn't be carrying an embitter. And they had a sat phone, which sat phone, you need line of sight to a satellite, so they went in with that. There were some mistakes made, not to bag on the SEALs, lessons learned. So, they went in. They were supposed to do false insertions, and
oh, you're breaking up. He's saying they were supposed to do false insertions. False insertions is where you
in
land
theater
several different places and then get off. There you are. Go ahead. Well, he's frozen up again. So false insertions are.
They went in, but they're fast roping in. You hear me?
Yeah, you're breaking up though. You there? No, you're frozen. So a false insertion is, instead of just landing, then you land several different places and you don't know where you drop off. Very important. He's saying they were supposed to do those, but they did not do those. Hopefully he'll come back on. I will text him that he's frozen again, and we'll see if he can fix that. Boy, someone doesn't want him talking. I think this is more his stuff than that interception as well. So would he recommend a 15-year-old son? Tonatox is asking. Well, I know his son just went into the Army because I knew him as a kid. There he's back.
I'm sorry, Jeff. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, gotcha.
Okay, we got a thunderstorm going on, and I live 50 miles from the nearest city, so
right.
So I don't know where you dropped me, but basically they were supposed to do false insertion. They were roping in. I don't know if you covered that, but every rope I've done in theater, they pull the ropes back in the helicopter. For whatever reason, they cut the ropes. So 100. I don't know if they were doing a 90-foot rope or 120, but regardless of that, they're heavy and you don't want to be carrying that rope. So they tried to stash it. Of course, it was compromised. So there was a lot of red flags from the get-go on that mission. But anyway, we didn't get tasked for that mission until couple, the 47 went in with their QRF. For your audience, QRF is Quick Reaction Force, and they went in with Army Special Ops, Green Berets, and everybody on board died. They got shot down with the RPG. They're flying in the same area, and everybody on that bird died. And we were the CSAR component out of Kandahar, and we wanted to help. So Colonel McCrander was our commander, and he went and met with their air officer and told him our capabilities. And because being a Air Force pararescue team, not 2-4 PJ team or anything like that, there was some resistance. But once they got our capabilities brief, they said, yeah, go get a crack at it. And
so that's a great point for the audience. Is there's lots of special operations elements that commanders don't know what they do. They just don't know, what a CSAR capability is or what a PSYOP capability is, and so they're just not aware of what's out there lots of times.
Yeah. So we're there to do combat search and rescue, and a lot of people don't know what pararescue is. Bottom line, I go and visit my son that's 11 Bravo in the Army down at Fort Carson, and talk to some of his guys. They have no idea what pararescue is.
That's what I was saying. In fact, there's somebody on here who says, would you recommend joining the PJ pipeline? I have a 15-year-old son who is interested in serving like his grandfather, who is a retired command sergeant major of the Army. So, and I said, well, your son joined the Army, but would you recommend this 15-year-old go the pararescue pipeline, going young like you did?
Well, you need to get as much information on. You got to have a passion for it. Does he like doing medical? What do you want to do with your career? I would have never done anything else. Now that I know, I served with the Navy. I served with the Army. I went to a lot of Army schools. I went to the Green Berets, Special Forces, High Risk SEER, Halo School, and there's different advantages of each branch of the service. But had I do it over again, I would have done exactly what I did. I was just lucky I found out about pararescue. But it's a lifestyle, Jeff. You know this. If you're going to go in and do something that special, it's a big commitment, and it's a lifestyle, and it will change your life. And you have to be 100% committed to it and devoted to that craft, or you're not going to exceed in special ops. You might do 4 or 6 years, but you're not going to be, to do 20 years in special ops. It takes a little bit of luck, and it takes desire, 100% desire. And it's a lifestyle, and it will change your life. You have to sacrifice a lot. I've been through a lot of relationships. I missed a lot of birthdays, Thanksgivings. Why 99% of the people at Thanksgiving are wiping gravy off their jaws. We're in Afghanistan, sleeping in a hole. So it's a lifestyle that doesn't appeal to everybody. But if that's something you want, if anybody wants to do, they got to research it and find out as much as you can. And there's different resources out there. SOCOM Athlete, Jason Sweet runs that. He runs a great prep course that you could go down and do a week with him. He has a hell day that it's 18 hours straight of just it's pretty intense, and I've helped them out with that several times. It's not expensive, but it will tell you where you're at, and you have an honest assessment. We bring in Green Berets, Rangers, Navy SEALs, Pararescue, CCT as adjunct instructors, and they hammer your ass, and they're there that the students could ask questions, and it preps you for special ops. You don't want to do it how I did, come in blind and not knowing anything, because your chance of success is very low. The more information you have, the better prepared you are. The higher your success rate's going to be. So
And Jason was another Warrior School alumni as well. And
yes,
actually his dad, Maurice, that's the only SOCOM dad-son team I know of is Maurice and Jason. They were both active at the same time.
yeah,
Maurice,
I remember bringing his dad in. So Jason, he's got he was on the Drop Mic podcast or something. He tells a great story of how, he's praying to God, direct me, and God, tell me what you want me to do with my life. He was like an all-American level baseball pitcher that threw out his arm at the University of Arizona, and he's starting all over again. He's homeless, living out of his car. He's praying to God, and he said, God, if tell me what you want me to do, and I want a phone call tomorrow right when I wake up of what you want me to do. He hadn't talked to his dad in his weeks, and his dad calls and says, son, I want to introduce you to a guy, Chief Master Sergeant James Sanchez from Tucson, Arizona. And he brought Jason down and introduced me. Maurice was a class behind me in the early 80s, and so I knew who he was. He says, hey,
well,
my son.
He's a stellar PJ. I mean, he did that congressional rescue in Africa or something. The body.
Yeah. But he calls and says, I want to introduce you to my son. And his son came down, and his son wanted to be a Navy SEAL. And I talked to him, and I was impressed by him. Yeah, I had never met him, but I was impressed by him. Obviously, he was in good shape. He was a level 1 college athlete. And I said, I'll tell you what, we got a selection in 3 weeks. Come on down. So he went, and my selection that I ran at Tucson, the thing about the reserves is you could be a little selective. And you want to be selective because you could have these guys on your team for 20 years. Unlike active duty, you got that 3-year rotation. So when I went to Tucson, I had dedicated myself to getting the best people I possibly could down there. Matter of fact, I recruited from a lot of guys that left the 2-4, Tellsworth, Rob Gregg. A lot of my guys came from the 2-4, and I wanted to build the best pararescue team. It was the first team I was ever in charge of. At the 2-4, I was an element leader, but that doesn't have a lot of power. But there's the first team that I could call my own. So I built the best team I possibly could. We won the PJ Rodeo, best PJ team for the 2 years that I was the chief there. That it's every other year is the rodeo, and I built a really good team. So I brought Jason down. We had a selection. Our selection last a couple of days, and we take them on a rucksack march, put them in the mud pit. I don't know if you ever came out to any of those, Jeff, but we invite people out, and he did really good. He interviewed, and we hired him, and he was successful. He got washed back in airborne school, believe it or not, but it wasn't for anything you might think. He got washed back by going in the girls' dorm, and they were going to throw him out of. They were going to throw him out of the. They were going to throw him out of the military for that. And I said, you know what? I already spent $475,000 on this guy. I called their sergeant major down there and cashed in a chief chip and did some deal. And he ended up doing KP for about 3 weeks, working in the kitchen, humble. And he got washed back in the next class, but he graduated and became a really good PJ. And so he's in the pipeline. Well, his dad's going through a pretty bad divorce, and his dad was, a really successful builder. And his dad calls and said, "Hey, man, Can you give me a job? I said, Maurice, man, you're 45 years old. Are you sure you want to do this? Because you're going to have to go through the PJ school again. You know, you won't have to go through dive school or Halo school, but you will have to go through the PJ school again. Are you sure that's something you want to humble yourself to? He said, absolutely. I want to be on your team. So he came down. So Reed Quallen, you were there in Tucson during this time.
I was very impressed with Maurice, always. Really
Yeah.
impressive.
Yeah, really good guy. So I got to get him back Halo qualified, you know, and my team's downrange. So there's only a couple guys that could take a guy out of an airplane that hadn't jumped in 10 years. You got to be a flight examiner, you got to be AFF, you got to be, you know, a really good jumper. Well, I'm an E9 and I'm the oldest guy, one of the oldest guys on the team. I think Will Hoyt probably had me by a couple years, but um, he goes, hey, man, I'm going to the PJ school. I need to be current in diving and jumping. I go, you absolutely do. So they had a rule in the Air Force that, you know, father and son can't fly on the same airplane. You know that, right? They can't deploy together. They can't fly together. They can't do anything high risk together.
Yep,
So to get around that, I took them to Eloy. You remember that civilian drop zone?
I do.
So I took them to Eloy and I rented a plane and we AFF'd Maurice. He hadn't jumped in over 10 years, probably 15. And we
Wow.
took him out and we all linked up. We're filming it. A great time. Landed in a drop zone. I'm walking off and then my heart went into SVT. And that pretty much ended my Air Force career. You know, they took me off flight status after that. But make a long story short, 4 years later, Maurice is ready to retire. He calls me. I'm living in New Mexico on my ranch doing contract work. And he calls me and says, hey, dad's retiring next week. He wants you to jump him. So I went back to the team. They gave him my old parachute back. We rented a civilian plane, father, son. They taped it. And I did his last jump. That was the last time I jumped out of an airplane. And that was in 2000, I think it was 2004. Yeah, 2004 or 2014.
Was,
2014. Yeah.
was that the party at the Green Beret Club in Bragg? That was that the retirement party that we went to?
Uh, were we at Fort Bragg together?
Yeah,
We
we
went
were
to.
doing something. I remember. I remember it was somebody's retirement party, and they threw him in the lake at the end of the night. Everybody was drunk.
Okay, well, we must have been doing a class down there or something,
Yeah, something
and
like
and
that.
we got invited to a retirement party, and I mean one of our
Well, you
crazy
got
nights
invited
out.
and you tagged along because you know
Yeah,
everybody.
yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah. But yeah, we had that last jump for Maurice and Jason. Jason stayed in for a few more months and he retired and started that SOCOM athlete thing. But yeah, good times, and you know, after I retired from the military, you know, I had that 1,600-acre ranch in New Mexico, and that's a whole nother story. You know, my grandpa, my dad always said invest in silver no matter what. So I was buying silver when I was in Japan for like $3 an ounce, and I had acquired just under 10,000 ounces of silver. And so when this land came up for sale in 2010, silver had spiked to like $41 an ounce. So I ended up selling all my silver for $38 an ounce. And I bought that 1,600-acre ranch out in New Mexico. I built a range, a drop zone. I got a small contract with the PJ school to do small team tactics out there. And life was good. And then I lost my ranch in the fire there and then had to go back to work. So I started working contract again. I worked for Defense Threat Reduction Agency, DITRA, Cubic Global Defense. Did a couple of things with Warrior School. I think you had me out there a couple times as a guest instructor. And started saving money again to buy this ranch I'm at now. But I haven't done anything since 2016. You know, I broke my back again and became 100% disabled and, you know, unemployable, unfortunately, through the VA. So just living the dream out here at the ranch now.
Yeah, you're doing real well now. That's quite a career and quite some stories. I just also got to remind you, we got to mention Flores, White, and McCaskill are the three
Yeah.
KIA PJs that are Warrior School alumni that I always had up on my wall of honor in my office there, and will again.
Yeah, I was really impressed, Jeff, when I came down. I think it was 2015 or 16 when I came down to Tucson, and I saw their plaques up in their classroom, and it was very touching to see that you recognize those as being, not only part of my team but one of your students. And I'll tell you, Nick McCaskill, those guys don't know. I mean, he was a guy I recruited, brought in, and excellent operator. And we promoted him to chief. He died, there in Afghanistan, but he was he was an intricate part of the 306, one of the plank holders and founding members of the 306 when we switched from the 305th, and a great leader. It was touching to see that you recognized him and had a plaque in your
Oh, definitely.
school.
And I'll be back up in my new office as well. And Flores, I think, had 14 deployments, if I recall.
Yeah, that guy was, he was the first guy to raise his hand. He wanted to be on every deployment. Yeah, great troops there. Great troops.
Yeah, really something. Well, it's been great having you and catching up. You don't have any social media where anybody follows you or anything like that, correct?
Nah, I mean, I'm out here in the sticks. It's lucky I even have a single. I'm sitting up here. I'm sitting out here on the porch because I lost you earlier. But yeah, I would love to come down and see you, Jeff. And this is the first podcast I've done in years. But any way I could support, and I love what you're doing, and I'd be honored to be back anytime, brother.
Well, thank you so much, brother, for coming on and for persevering to get through there. I'm sure the audience has appreciated as a lot, very much. So I'm glad you're doing so well too. You're really like me. You're really beat up, and we got to slow down so we stick around.
Yeah. Yep. I'm still nursing this Achilles tendon. As you know, I severed my Achilles tendon. I walked into the VA and I told them I wanted an MRI, and of course they saying, well, you couldn't be walking if you had a torn Achilles tendon. I said, well, I got a pretty high tolerance for pain, my brother.
Yeah.
And so that went 6 weeks, and finally they did an MRI, and they said, you need emergency surgery. So I was in surgery the next day. So this happened in February. So I'm out for the year. And, for those that don't know, I race motocross in the national level. So I'm going to lose my number one next year, but we do have a race in November I plan on going to, and maybe I'll stop by and say howdy.
Sounds good.
All right, brother.
All right.
You take care.
All
right. Thanks for having me. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye. Yeah, I remember when I broke my leg on a jump, I got up and walked away too. The regular people are just not familiar with the special operations mentality there. Anyway, but I hope you enjoyed that. I'm always trying to bring in the legends and giants that I've worked with over the years. And this is somebody that I worked with in Warrior School, after I left active duty, but starting in 2004 and continuing on up for years and years. And we've stayed in touch. Great guy. So anyway, please try and support BeReady123.com. They have great products there, from beanies to backpacks to generators to sat phones. BeReady123.com. Use Prather for a 10% discount. And remember, the cabal's conundrum is corruption. The reset is rampant, but the corruption breeds incompetence. Institutions to run require integrity. Individuals to man them, intestinal fortitude. Intestinal fortitude cannot be faked. The faker's emotionality ensnares them. Martyrdom overcomes murder. Self-sacrifice beats selfishness. Their immaturity infects them. Goliath's glare missed David's handheld trebuchet. wasn't a handheld sling. It was a trebuchet, a staff. Look at the scripture. Why do you approach me with your staff or your sticks in your hand? Wellington withdrew till Bonaparte blundered at Waterloo. Euston hit when Santa Anna was strung out. The reset rots the cabal corpse from within. They drop dead daily at news desks and weekly fall on football fields. Our strategy is resistance and resiliency. Our tactics, grit and guts. Our war is wit, wile, will, and waiting until.